Welcome to the Inside Track. My name is Kyle Caldwell. I am Deputy Editor of Money Observer, and today I am joined by Stuart Rhodes, Manager of the M&G Global Dividend Fund. The fund invests globally. I was wondering if you could give us a flavour of how you go about finding these global dividend-paying businesses.
Sure, so we have a pretty sophisticated screening process to try and find companies that have been growing their dividend streams for pretty much 10 years or more. That's what we're looking for, and we'll go anywhere around the world to try and find those names. Now, the biggest contributors in terms of geographies that produce those kind of companies with those great dividend track records, the US is a very big contributor. So when we look at dividend discipline around the world, we do find more and more companies in the US that are capable of giving us those dividend streams that grow each and every single year. But it's not just the US. We find opportunities in most parts of the world. So Western Europe is a very big contributor. Specific markets like Australia and Brazil, for example, have very good tax implications for dividends, so they tend to be, tend to find a lot of companies with good dividend track records there. So really, we do have freedom to go anywhere in the world to find these businesses.
Once you find these businesses that have, say, a dividend track record of 10 years or more, how do you then scrutinise the business to ensure that the dividend being paid is going to be sustainable?
Sure. So we do think the history is a good indicator of whether a board is showing you the willingness and commitment to paying a dividend. So it does tell you something about the likelihood going forward, but clearly then you have to also assess the fundamentals. Just because a company has paid a dividend in the past doesn't necessarily mean they're always going to be capable of doing that. So we look for certain red flags. So one big red flag would be if the dividend is north of maybe 75% of operating cash flow. That would be quite a big signal that there's not a lot of room left there, and also there's not a lot of money left going back to reinvest in the business. And ultimately we're looking for growing dividend streams, so the company has to grow to be able to provide that growing income stream. So there aren't many companies that can't reinvest anything and still grow. So that 75% sort of threshold is quite a key one for us.
And does the approach that you take lead you more towards sort of quality growth companies?
Yeah, so they would be big contributors. So we have three buckets with our portfolio. We have quality companies, we have growth companies, and we also have what we call asset companies, which are kind of cyclical businesses. Now, finding the quality businesses isn't too difficult. You have the Nestle's, the Johnson & Johnson's, the Microsofts, companies which everyone knows, everyone's heard of. Their dividend track records are pretty much bulletproof. They go back many, many decades. And if you look at their affordability of dividends today, they also look very good. So, those companies we have exposure to, but really where we spend a lot of time is in the cyclical area, because that's more difficult to identify those companies. There are companies which are exposed to the GDP cycle globally that still have very good dividend track records. Their share price tends to be a bit more volatile, but actually the underlying fundamentals are still robust enough for them to pay a dividend in both good times and in bad times. And the advantage of looking there is you get fantastic opportunities in terms of valuation and share prices. So for example, right now when we see situations like the trade talks which are going on, which are sort of hitting markets in certain areas, those are often the kind of companies that we'll be looking at to see if we're getting a fantastic valuation opportunity to enter into those businesses.
Relatively recently you've been increasing exposure to the UK. I was wondering if you could kind of give a bit of a flavour of the sort of businesses that you've been looking at. Is it the more domestically focused names?
No, so it's the opposite actually. So, one of the best parts of being a global fund manager is actually Brexit isn't a big discussion or a big topic area for me really. And actually the UK holdings that we do have tend to be much more global in nature. It's just that they're listed in the UK really, rather than actually have much material in the way, or are materially exposed to the domestic economy. The only company we really have is St James's Place that has specific sort of UK exposure. The others really are big multinationals where their revenue streams are coming in many different currencies. So, Brexit is not a particular big issue in the fund and the way the fund's positioned.